Hello, my name is Michelle, and you're listening to Profit is a Choice. Hello, Rebecca Ward is with me today on the podcast. She's an award-winning designer out of Sacramento, California, and she is really dedicated to nurturing emerging talents in the industry. She serves this through her podcast, Design Curious, and she also has a mentorship program called My Design Mentor. She is really focused on trying to help people get those initial questions answered to determine what they want to do in business, especially in this industry. And so we're going to talk all about that, about the different ways that people come into this industry and the questions they have at the beginning. I hope you enjoy our discussion. Every day, empowered entrepreneurs are taking ownership of their company financial health and enjoying the rewards of reduced stress and more creativity. With my background as a financial software developer, owner of multiple businesses in the interior design industry, educator, and speaker, I coach women in the interior design industry to increase their profits, regain ownership of their bottom line, and to have fun again in their business. Welcome to Profit is a Choice. Hi, Rebecca. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Michelle. Wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. I'm so glad you're here. We are going to talk all things getting a business started and maybe shifting and changing careers and pivoting. I would love to hear a little bit of your story before we begin. I think you and I have some different parallels that'll be fun to discuss, but tell everybody a little bit about you and your journey to design.
Yeah. Well, like most designers, I was creative as a young person. I rearranged my room all the time in the middle of the night. So my parents wouldn't tell me I couldn't do it. So that was early days. I was fortunate enough that my parents let me make some design decisions within their home. Because I was quite opinionated on what looked right and didn't. So I knew from a young age that I wanted to go into maybe architecture. I didn't know that interior design was an option as like a college major at that time. It wasn't until I was later in high school looking into it. And so, but I did a very traditional path. I went out of high school into a 4-year degree at Sacramento State University for interior design. And while I was there, I interned for a local designer who does high-end residential and restaurants. And I worked for him for part-time for a couple years. Once I graduated, I worked for a model home designer for about 3 years, which was really good experience. I think that because we were turning over so many houses in 1 year for the builders that all had to look different from each other, that it was a great study in a short amount of time of like all the different styles and all the things that you need to do, because we do it from the ground up as well. So we were on site for construction and things like that. So then the recession hit in 2007. Model homes started not being a thing that was needed. And so I got laid off. I went to work for an architect for a year, doing drafting for them. And then they laid me off. And so finally I was like, well, I think now's the time to start my business because I know I can't lay myself off of work. So when I got laid off the first time, I decided to get my business license because I knew that was the direction I was going to head. Even though I was working full-time for another person, I was like, well, let's get started. I had a friend reach out and say that she wanted help with her house. She heard that I was, starting to go out on my own. So I just started baby steps into my own business. And then when the recession was in full swing, I went completely on my own. My saving grace, I would say, was my drafting skills because I got a job as an independent contractor for an architectural designer, drafting for him his kitchen and bath, which was not something I had as much experience in up to this point. And so I got a really good study in kitchen and bath design. So I do his floor plans and elevations. Sometimes I would meet with his clients. In meantime, I was growing my own company, but very slowly, with very little, I'd say, aspirations of how to make it profitable. I just wanted to have projects. And so I was not charging very much. I was not looking to see what my profit margins were or anything like that. But yeah, so several years into it, I finally got a business coach that kind of helped me start to analyze those things, start to charge more for my time, and really opened up my opportunity for hiring on somebody and kind of scaling the business a little bit. So here we are, like 17 years later, and still going strong. And yeah, so that's kind of my path into interior design.
You know, what's interesting is I think that rarely does anybody come out of college with any degree and just go start a business doing exactly what they have learned. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's not what most of us do. I know I've spoken to a couple of different college interior design programs, and I would ask them, who in here is going to walk right out and start your own business? Not one hand went up. Every one of them was more of a, I want to go work somewhere and get some experience. And honestly, within a lot of the classrooms, a good portion of them were going commercial as opposed to residential, which I always found fascinating, since I work primarily on I mean, my clients certainly do a little bit of both, but I'm not coaching directly, in that full suite of commercial only design. Um, but I just thought that was kind of interesting. And then what they usually say is, I know what I learned in school, but the application of it, So first there's this thought of, how do I even apply what I learned in school? Because we're learning sometimes in the most vanilla of ways, if you will. And then there's all other flavors once you get out into the world to design. It's not just as formulaic as maybe we learn all the formulas. You know, I usually say you can tell somebody who has an eye versus somebody who has the education, because you can have the eye. And like you said, when you were younger, you just knew look, there is something about it that that the scale and the proportion and the balance and the rhythm are all done in a certain way. And later you understand the golden proportions of doing it all. You know what I mean? You understand the math and you understand the reasoning behind why what you see makes sense and why it doesn't. And so I love that you had that experience, because most people do. They come out and they need to kind of do some on the job training. They need to do some real life application of the skill set that they've learned. And then what happens is it's E-Myth revisited. I keep saying that every time, but it's, oh my gosh, I bake great cakes, or I bake great pies. I think I'll go open a bakery. And then it is a whole different thing than baking the pie. I know I have coached quite a few people who were just starting out their own business, not new to design necessarily, but new to the running of their own firm within the first couple of years. And what the challenge that I even see for some of them, Rebecca, is that they know how to design, like either from school or from working with other people. But the minute they shift into doing it on their own, they might not have known how to run the business. And that is a completely different thing behind it. But it takes all the different experiences. I love how your story, you had experience in model homes, which is selection process, very quick selection process, as well as trying to keep everything different so that we're not like not formulaic in one regard, and that these are all the things that we need to do, but not cookie cutter, I would say, and that everything has to look the same. I remember when we bought a house like 25, 30 years ago, they would be like, you can choose A or B. And it was like the gray plan or the beige plan. Like there was no, there was no individuality. It was like, you can go down the gray path or you can go down the tan path. Which one is it going to be? And so now we've come a long way from that. But then, all of that with the kitchen and bath and all just really set you up to understand all of it when you decided to go out on your own. What would you say was the biggest challenge when you went out on your own?
I would say it was definitely understanding how to charge my clients,
Okay.
I mean, I didn't know anything about bookkeeping. So my
Yeah,
first hire was a part-time bookkeeper
sure.
because I didn't even know how to set up my books, for taxes. I wanted to make sure I got that right. So that was overwhelming for sure. But bringing an expert alongside you was helpful. But I felt like, especially at this time, and I know, you know, this many years later, it's a lot more information is available to people through podcasts and coaching and things like that.
Right,
But at
right.
that time in 2007, designers were still really closed off about how they
Yeah.
run their businesses, whether they were profitable or not, and how much they were charging. So I had a guess at a lot of it based on who I had previously worked for and how much I had seen of how they ran their business. I kind of just gleaned from that. I had my business practices books from college for the one class that I took. So I scoured that book because I don't know, like, I mean, I guess it's aging me now, but like, we didn't have as many resources on the internet for things
Yeah.
like that. So um, I just kind of pieced it together as much as I could at that time of what was available. And, you know, I didn't even think though about hiring a coach. Like that wasn't something.
It wasn't a thing back then. I mean, I started my coaching in 2013, and I was one of the first that were out there for this industry. There, I mean, there might have been one, maybe two at the time, and I had already been mentoring and educating since 2009. And I even remember, I'll age myself even further back than you. I remember when I started my company in 2000, going to Barnes and Noble and getting a coffee. They actually had a Starbucks inside our Barnes and Noble. And I would go get a coffee and get the books and go sit down and read the books to try to understand or to see or to figure something out that I didn't know. I mean, I was scouring those things because people weren't open. I remember the comment I always made was, I always thought people were rude. Later, I realized it's because they didn't know. They weren't being rude. They just didn't have the grasp on it for the questions that I was asking, right? How much can I make in this? What can my business do? How much can I bring in? Like, what is the ceiling on this? And that was kind of the answers that I wasn't getting because nobody could tell me. And so then I was reverse engineering the math to try to figure out what it might take with capacity and, all those things. Just, but not until you're living it. And so I fully understand that getting out the book from college. At least you kept that book. I mean, most people would have thrown that one away. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. So that was very helpful. I think in that had like ASID's a copy of their contract as well, which has so much legalese in it that it was like hard to even understand and know what to do. Like I knew I needed a contract. I knew I should probably charge for the initial consultation, but I think I only did like $50 or something. And so
Yeah, yeah.
I just
Those hard lessons, though, Rebecca, sometimes are the best lessons because you go, oh, that stung, or oh, that didn't feel fair on one side or even, right? It's the lessons that are getting our attention. They're just sometimes painful along the way.
yeah, and I was definitely coming from a mindset of probably scarcity, but as well that like I love doing this for a living. Why, like, I don't feel like I can charge people a lot because
Yeah.
I enjoy it
Love
so
it so
much.
much. Mhm. Well, because isn't one of the coaching questions that gets asked sometimes, what do you love so much you would almost do it for free? And I think for many of us in this industry, whether we're doing custom window treatments, upholstery, design, something in this creative realm, it is that we have a natural inclination towards it. We have a natural ability or gifting to see and to work in that area. And therefore, it feels so general as if everybody would have it, that why would I charge for that? Everybody has it until we really come to understand not everybody has the same gifting and the same ability or the same inclination. And so we shouldn't charge less for that just because it's easier for us. It actually means business is hard enough when we're doing something that comes natural that we love. Like we don't need to make it harder by not charging for it,
Yeah,
right?
100%. Yeah. So so that was a hurdle to overcome with that mindset of being like, I actually need to make a living.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to be married at the time, so I probably fell into the trap of like, oh, we've got this other income, so mine's not as the thing that we rely on so much. Um, but really, that was not benefiting me or anyone to have that
Right.
mindset. So with coaching and over the years, I definitely got over that, which led me to a couple of years ago thinking about like, as I love to, meet people for coffee who are interested in being a designer, and they have all the same questions that I had starting out. Even though there's so much information out there, they still need to talk to somebody
Right.
about the career.
Whether they went to college for it or not. I mean, both sides, right? There's the questions that come with even the thought process of what would it look like? What would I need to have set up? Could I, should I, all the things. And some may choose very much, at least I've seen, oh, that sounds doable, or like where I want to put my energy or resources. And others go, oh, that's what it takes. I don't want to do that. But they're kind of introduced to the wrestle of what it's going to look like to take the next step.
Yeah. So like many designers, I'm sure that also get this, but will get emails from students who are like, "Oh, I need to interview somebody for my class," or "I'm, going to be graduating. I kind of want to know what the career is all about," or like I'm going into college and my parents want me to like explore this thing that I'm interested in. And we got so many of those emails that I was like, I can't meet with all these people all the time. And I know I had talked to other designers like, yeah, I just always ignore those because I just never have.
Yeah, there's so many of them that come in, and you're so busy.
Yeah, my heart really goes out to those people because I was there. Like I wanted that information. There was no one who would talk to me when I was starting out. So I decided to start a program called My Design Mentor, which is online and it's accessible to anyone who needs to ask those questions. There's like 12 modules they can go through. It has all this information, but they can also just meet with me, schedule a time, and just ask me those questions, and I can help them along the way. So I felt like this was a way that I can meet with many people at once, kind of like schedule it so it's not like me going to coffee for an hour or two with someone. It's like we can just meet on Zoom for a half hour here and there, and I can meet with people all over the country or whoever needs it, because a lot of designers aren't able to do that. And so I want to be a resource that other designers could even send those inquiries to and be like, oh, you know what, you can talk to Rebecca. She has this program which will give you the information, then you can ask her more questions. So yeah, I started doing that a couple years ago, just because I think it's what's needed in our industry to elevate.
What's nice about that approach too is you can, like you said, meet with people anywhere, but it's at a time that fits in your schedule. And sometimes getting to coffee, it's not just the hour coffee, it's the 10 to 20 minutes to get to the coffee or the 30 minutes to get home from the coffee. It's the shifting of the attention and the time and where it fits into the day. I mean, there's so many other factors, right? And you're so right. I think it's not that people want to not give out the information. It's about the ones that are really, really busy and that have full businesses going, finding 2 or 3 hours to sit down to just chat doesn't feel like a luxury that maybe they have built into the way that they're managing their business. And so I'm curious about your mentorship. How do you define your mentorship differently from coaching?
Yeah. So I see mentorship as, this is something that I'm still actively doing. I'm still learning in my business. Like I'm still learning the best way to do things. And as I do it, I adjust and I share that information. Um, coaching is Coaches will ask you really tough questions and they'll really dig in. And I feel like mentorship is a little more, I'm coming alongside you. Like, let's take these first steps together, which is kind of how I like, it's a very easy approach to the coaching that you might need later on. Because first of all, it's fairly affordable, but there's not a huge time commitment. There's a lot of self-discovery. And then the mentorship that I'm giving you is just like, this is what works for me. I think it would work for you. Ask me any questions, but I'm not going to dig deep into be like, well, why didn't you do this today? Or what's your real motivation? Or what, like that's
Exactly,
not the
exactly.
level that I'm going to get to with you. But I start you out on that path because most people coming to the program have never worked with a coach before either. So they don't know what that's about. So once they've worked with me on this beginning level of mentorship, which is someone who can just come alongside any project that they're working on. If they even started their business, they have a few of their own projects going on and they want feedback. That's where am at as a professional. I can like say, oh yeah, this is a great choice, because often designers are so siloed when they're working on their own, when they have their
Oh,
own business,
yeah.
they don't have anyone to get feedback from, and they haven't built their community yet. And so I can be that person for them, but they are going to need that next level coaching of someone to
Right.
ask them the hard questions about their business and push them into those upper levels. And so I see my program as the beginning baby steps, and then you'll go graduate into a bigger coaching program.
What you have done is so needed. I know so many designers that even if they were coaching with me, right, and they were newer in the business, they might just want another designer to look into like their deliverable and the way that they're doing it, and maybe the selections that they had, or this is how I'm going to present this to the client. Have you found a way that works? Things that are much more specific to the design work itself. And if they don't have that, if they haven't yet found their person, if you will, because a lot of designers, a lot of people in creative industries, they find that other person that they can kind of bounce off of, especially until they can build out their own team, right? And so they're sharing, a lot of them I've seen share space, or let's get together and I'll review yours and you review mine, so that they can have that feedback. So to even provide that when they're just getting started is so good, because most people want to do really well at their job and at their work, and they just want somebody to look at it and go, you're on track, you're doing it, I'm going to put in air quotes for those that are listening, the right way, or what you've done is acceptable, or it's beautiful, or oh, that looks great, but the juxtaposition of that one piece is like off to me, or have you checked the scale of this? Just somebody who can provide eyes to maybe save them from the challenges that they may have later. You in design, I'll tell you, it's one of those things, and you could probably attest to this. You can make some mistakes that are extremely costly, and mistakes that end up costing you by even either having to have a storage unit or resell something. I mean, you can get stuck very quickly with expensive items that don't fit because a measurement was missed, or a door opening was missed, or something small, came into play. So just having that ability to have a conversation with somebody to kind of help you. I love that so much for the industry. So let me ask this, Rebecca, if somebody, who are the people that come into the mentorship program? I think we've kind of dotted around it, but what would make them come in? Is it usually those that are either seeking out, like the college student who's saying, where, do I even want to go here? Do I want to do this? The college student who's wrapping up, who's going, all right, what's out there? What does it look like to get a job? Because those questions are very different than the young designer, I mean, young business wise, who's going out on their own for the first time and want somebody to look over their shoulder and walk with them down a certain path. Do you handle all of those or a subset of that?
Yeah, it is more often the new designer that is going through the program. While I could definitely, I mean, there's information in there for college graduates, and it definitely would be a great platform for them. I haven't had as many come through who are, because most of the time they'll just go from college to career, like to a job,
Exactly.
entry level
Exactly.
job. They're not necessarily exploring businesses beyond it. Now, it could be so most of the time the people who come through, they might have just gone through a design program, but it's their second degree or it's their
Second
second career
career.
choice. Yeah.
Yes.
So they don't have time to go entry level into a company. And so
Right.
starting a business is going to be what's going to provide them the same amount of income that they were working at whatever career they were at before. So most often it's that. I also have some people who have come from other countries and they're learning how to do design in America as opposed to the other country
Nice.
that they've been in. And so that is a really interesting process as well. What is nice in the modules that I have within the program is like I have discussion in there about, do you want to be an employee versus an entrepreneur, and the pros and cons in both? How do you work with trades? What is a niche? Like, what are some areas you could specialize in? Um, what's the money mindset? Because we all have money issues going into it. We're using a lot of other people's money. Our clients typically have more money than we do. How do we deal with that kind of
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is so good. I just think of all the people, like I'll give you a prime example. I remember when I worked in software, I wanted, I, I would have loved to have been a designer, like from the very beginning, if I had even known that it existed. In the small town where I grew up, I don't even know of anybody that was a designer. Don't ever remember any piece or part of anything like that. So I didn't even know it was a thing. I know that I loved to decorate. I know that I loved entrepreneurship. I know that I would, if somebody told me they loved it, I would go make it. I mean, I was making Madonna shirts and all kinds of stuff back in the day. And we had some glitter going on. We had all the big bows in the hair. We had the 80s thing. We were rocking it. But I had no idea. So I went into the other pieces that I love is the engineering and the math and all of that. So I went down that path. I was working in software and I had such a draw. We had bought a house. And so I was like, really like, I want to understand design principles and I love putting things together. And long story short, there was a local college that was probably maybe 2 miles from where I worked in downtown Atlanta. And they had a night program, like a beginning design program that you could go through that did like some color theory and how you put things to, like a small print and a large print and medium print and stripes and how you organize and pull other things together. And I loved going to those classes and making all the boards and doing all the things. Like it fed a piece of my soul. And so I went and started doing research. What would it mean for me to go back to college to get the degree and to go get a job? Well, at the time, I was already making six figures in my 20s, back in the 80s and early 90s. So I already was really well paid back then. And I was looking at getting rid of that, going back to a school to have all of that debt all over again, to come in at like 18 to $20,000 back then. And I was like, that makes sense to nobody anywhere. Like I don't care what that drive is within me. I'm not willing to pay that price at this point. I had a young son and I was like, it does not make sense to me. And so to have had something like what you have that says, I understand you can't go back and you know take on 100,000 in debt and then make 18,000 a year. Like I understand you can't do that. What could you do? What is available? What are the opportunities? It was another way that you could approach the work. It's so helpful. I would have been the poster child that would have not been able to do it the traditional way.
Yeah, because even like I get on my soapbox on my podcast sometimes about how our industry is underpaid overall. Like it's just we underpay ourselves as business owners, but also we are not able to pay our entry level designers, our mid range designers, what they really should be making. Like people get discouraged when I tell them that like an entry level design position is 22 to $26 an hour. And if they're coming from another career where they're making 40 or something like that, then they're not inclined to go work for someone else because
Right.
their skills are at entry level. So
That's
that's when we look at, well, what other skills do you have? Have you been project managing in this other industry? And that is definitely transferable to be a project manager on a
Mhm.
design firm side. So we look at ways to use the skills that you have to elevate your pay scale. But yeah, I get on a little soapbox sometimes about how we all need to be making more as an industry because it's
Oh
really
yeah.
hard to be that low starting out.
I'm seeing, well, you're right. And I'm seeing a lot of entry level anywhere is around $50,000. Like just, and it can be much higher in some places. I've seen some are, junior designers are in the 60 something $1,000 range, but it's because of the cost to live and where they're located. So, when we're still back in the 20 and 30 thousands to get people to come on, and then we wonder why sometimes people aren't as dedicated to the work or why we're not getting top notch, just because we're not paying for top notch, which then means we need to understand the pricing and the profitability. Like, hello, I'll raise my flag and climb up on my box. But if we don't understand those things, then, and it's a communication because we are having to make our money. Like one of my big pet peeves is when people talk about, I can't charge that an hour because I'm not worth it. Then the hourly rates we charge have nothing to do with our personal worth. Zero, not even connected. It has to do with what can the company provide and do and what does it need in that time, right? And when we can start to do some of that money mindset and separate the things out that are holding us back, then we can charge for the expertise and for the deliverables that we bring, the value that we provide, which is a very different conversation than what am I worth in an hour. And so, being able to pay our people starts with being able to charge correctly for the work we're doing and working with the right people. There's a trickle down effect. Like it's hard to make it up at the bottom if we haven't done it well at the top. What I am encouraged by in the program that you have, Rebecca, is for so many have, however, whether they're coming in as a second career or they're coming in as a continuation of a career where they've worked for other people and now they're going in to work for themselves. Because even then, there's a confidence that they might have the confidence to be able to do the design work, but the confidence of what the building of the business looks like, that same thing that you talked about. I work with a lot that are starting to come in there, right? They know how to design. They have done kitchens, they've done baths, they've done whatever it is, the whole family room, they've done builds, they do renos. They've done the physical work. They can build the pie. They know how to make the pie. Running the bakery, running the design firm, running the workroom, whatever it is, the business unit, that's what they don't always know. And so just having somewhere that gets those, like you said, those seeds planted. Here's even the seeds of, well, what are the next questions that you can ask and where do you go from here? Shows them that there is something else and somewhere else to move. So I love that you are providing a resource that allows for business to be done better. I'm aging. We all are, right? But it's been really interesting to me how I'm going to say over the last year in particular, I feel like I'll just be really frank. In my prayer time, I very much feel like God is placing on my heart to look back at the women that are walking behind me and to, instead of being so worried about where I'm moving forward, to make sure that I am turning back and that I am building up the women that are walking behind me with the knowledge that I have. Not that I don't already do that somewhat in coaching, but I have felt even more this push to really love and support the women that are behind me. Because here's the deal, and I think this is what you are showing as well. We're all going to hit bumps. We're all going to have mistakes. We're all going to have challenges. We're all going to fail, if you want to use that word, and then get back up. But if I can provide either support, love, care, information that keeps people from falling into the same places I fell in, at least they have the information, and then they can do what they want to do with it, right? But I'm not withholding something that could help somebody not run it. And I think when you really love people, it's easier to be willing to want to help and to give that than to say, well, I fell, so it's normal you fall, right? Um, that and there are some like that who are kind of like, well, it happened to me, so it's going to happen to you, and they just let it go. I have felt very tendered in my heart as I'm not looking to like retire tomorrow, but it's on my horizon. I mean, it's in my future. It's closer to my future than building a whole business from the ground up since 2000. Um, and so just really looking at how to do that well, how to love people where, how to care about other people that are starting. Because if we're all professional when we start, it elevates the industry as a whole. And so I love that that's what you are offering in your program, is that think about these things. This is what it looks like. Here are the questions that I asked. Here are the questions you may have. You know, here's how you could start it off well. You're going to run into things, but let me just show you what I've done. Here, let me give you what I have so that you have a step up into the next place that you want to go.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I get so excited when I'm talking to someone who's starting their business because I just want them to succeed. Like, that's just would
And
lights
they're
me
in that
up.
excited piece, so it's
Yeah,
easy to be excited with them.
exactly. And so, yeah, I just love giving in that way to people. And like you say, like the more we do this type of thing where we come alongside people and say, you don't have to fall in that ditch that I did. Like, here's the
Right.
information to avoid it. And as long as they take it and do the work, then they can avoid it. And then you get farther ahead and then they can help people in their path later on. So yeah, so it's like a pay it forward, isn't it? I just really am excited about the mentorship program. And yeah, and so that's also why I started the podcast Design Curious, which we cover a lot of the same types of topics. And so yeah,
I love the name of that podcast, Design Curious. Like, are you curious about it? It's almost like saying, I'm gonna, and it's probably exactly what you meant, which is why I'm reading it that way. It's almost like opening up your family room and saying, hey, we're going to talk about this topic today. Grab a cup of coffee or whatever and come in and sit down and let's chat. And
exactly
so
what
I
I
love that.
say. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So I'm picking up what you're putting down, but it just feels so relatable that way. And there is a lot of, I would say that in general, people have this idea, and I don't know how we've done it, but we have given off the idea that design is all glamorous and beauty and just um that we're just, I kind of think of like Father of the Bride, where they had the designer and he just kind of flitted through the house and did all the fun stuff and just kind of made it happen. And yeah, just all glamorous and stuff. And there are glamorous pieces and parts to what we do. You can seek it out if you want it. You can choose to avoid it if you don't. It's there's some of it that's there. It is certainly an industry that where we are surrounded, if we allow ourselves, by beautiful things, but it is an industry of deep detail, roll up your sleeves, a lot of work, a lot of project management, just a lot of logistics. Like there's so much negotiation. I mean, a lot of budgeting and financial, like there is a lot of other stuff in this industry. It's not honestly, and I mean, it's not overly simplistic, but it's not as easy as making a pie and selling a pie. You know what I mean? There is a lot that goes on, and some of these are very long range projects. And so, just even being curious enough to how much of the beauty is part of what we do and how much of it is rolling up your sleeves. Because I would submit that many that if they had known when they started their business that it was 15 to 20% pretty design and 80 to 85% roll up your sleeves and do all the work in the background and all the numbers and all the paperwork and all the tracking and all the calendaring and all the stuff, a lot of them would have probably not done it. They would have done something else. And then some still haven't wrapped their mind around the fact that it's not all pretty. And so the back end is kind of let go. So just even peeling the curtains back on to be successful and to really do it as more than a hobby or, yeah, I'll help you come decorate your home and we do all just the fun stuff. To really do the business piece of it is so much more. To even give them a true idea of what they're walking into, I just think is super valuable.
Yeah, that's exactly what the point of the podcast is. Is like I want to show you that it's you need grit in order to be a designer. Like you're dealing, especially residential, like you're
Yeah,
dealing with people's emotions. They run high sometimes if they're investing in their home and because they have this money tied to it, it's very emotional for them. And so you're having to deal with tough situations sometimes, or you make a mistake and you have to throw a lot of money at it. You need to like have that in reserve. It's yeah, there's just a lot of hard things. And I want to make sure people are aware, like with going in with eyes wide open before they get
that's
into
right.
the career. But I also talk about the great parts of it, but I just want them to have a realistic view. And then I also love to interview other designers because everyone has a different path into interior design. What's really
Yeah,
interesting about our industry is that there is different there's like really no threshold. So you don't have to have the education in most states. You don't have to be certified. And so some people just fall into the career easily. Some people have gone the traditional route like me. And so I love to hear from other designers how they've gotten into it. So I'll interview them on the podcast as well. So.
that's awesome. So, Rebecca, if anybody's listening to this podcast and they're thinking, you know what, I could use a design mentor, or I could use somebody to ask questions to, or even, hey, not me, but I got a friend that is bugging me because she won't leave me alone, asking me all these questions. And she's my direct competitor sitting beside me. I don't want to be the one to tell her all that, right? I wish her well, but I don't want to do it. They can send them to you. Where do they go if they're looking for that kind of help?
Yeah, so they can go to my website, ourwarddesign.com/my design mentor. So the program is called My Design Mentor, so you can find that there. But they can also find all the links through my podcast. So if you go to Design Curious on any platform that you listen to podcasts, they'll have all the links to the program there. I also will have downloads for you on the website that you can have of like it shows you what the career path is, the steps that you need to take to become an interior designer if you're curious about that. There's a quiz about what type of interior design you should be doing based on what your interests are. So there's a lot of fun things for them there. But yeah, if you go to ourwarddesign.com, then they'll find all that information.
That's amazing. And where are you hanging out in socials?
Almost always on Instagram is my spot. So it's at our ward design there as well. So
Awesome.
yeah, so I post to the podcast onto that account as well. So everything's in one spot. Easy to
Perfect.
find.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And we'll have all that in the show notes as well. Well, Rebecca, thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for what you're doing in the industry as well. That looking back and supporting other businesses, I really am excited for the opportunity that those people have that we didn't have, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that we're not now withholding it from them. So,
Mm-hmm.
really, really great work in that area. And thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you, Michelle. It's great to be on today.
Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks, Rebecca, so much for the conversation. If you're listening and you're just starting out, check out her podcast and her mentorship program. And if you have friends that are driving you crazy, asking you questions about wanting to start a business, send them her way. But maybe you're listening and you remember where you started and you're wondering what your next steps are and realizing that you need help to reach your goals. I would love for you to reach out for a discovery call and let us talk to you over here at Scarlet Thread Consulting. We offer business coaching, strategic planning, and a CFO to go to really help you understand your numbers. You can find more there at scarletthreadconsulting.com. You can also begin with Matrique Solutions so that you can have easy access to financial modeling and to see like a visual of where your financials are each month so that you can make the decisions that matter most to you. Whatever it is and whatever your next choice in your business, make sure that you do it with intention because profit doesn't happen by accident. Profit is a Choice is proud to be part of the designnetwork.org, where you can discover more design media reaching creative listeners. Thanks for listening and stay creative and business minded.